You're listening to the Courage Hotline podcast. I'm your host, Candace Doby, leadership development strategist, courage coach, speaker, and author. And on this show, I take real questions from professionals who are stuck in a swirl of fear, doubt, and hesitation. Then I give them candid, coded advice and practical strategies to help them check their fear, conjure their courage, and tackle their peskiest professional problems. Whether you're navigating workplace politics, speaking up in high-stakes meetings, or just trying to bet on yourself, you're in the right place. Let's get into another episode of the Courage Hotline podcast. And we've got a question from our next caller. So let's just get into it.
Hi, Candace. As someone who thrives in high-pressure situations and has built a reputation for delivering on tough assignments, I find myself constantly being tapped for the most demanding projects. While I appreciate the trust and challenge, it started to come at the expense of my personal life. My question is, how do you set healthy boundaries at work without losing opportunities or being seen as less committed?
Okay. Thank you for this question. And I also just want to take a minute before we get into the thick of the answer is to acknowledge that it sounds like you've got a reputation at work, and this is a reputation where you are the closer. You know, you're the fixer, and it sounds like you're the person that people tap at work when things get hard and tough. And so that is a reputation to be proud of. So let's just start there by acknowledging that. And I also hear what is underneath your question. And what I am hearing is you asking, if I was to say no, if I was to set a boundary, would I potentially lose opportunities? If I was to set a boundary, would I change the way people look at me? Would they stop coming to me to, be a part of these kinds of projects? Or would, I not be called in to high visibility projects? I mean, I hear that kind of going on is, if I set a boundary, will it cause me to miss out on or lose something? So if that is underneath it, if I am picking up what is being put down, then I do want to just share that that is normal and human for us to wonder what we might be losing from taking courageous action, from courageously speaking up, which is what you're wanting to do, courageously saying no or to create a boundary. What will I lose as a result of doing that? And so this relates to the first question on the Courage Ready model, which is, what is the risk? And the risk is really that you lose opportunities. The risk is that you lose access to relationships, or you lose being a part of the inner circle that meets at the water cooler. That's what we're at risk of losing. And I hear you loud and clear when you say that. Now, the thing is, the reason why it might be hard to create these boundaries is because you don't want to lose those things. You don't want to lose access and relationships and opportunities. And so this has a name, and it's called loss aversion. So loss aversion essentially is the psychological principle or a principle of psychology, let's call it that essentially says we are more motivated to prevent loss than we are to pursue gain. So the gain for you could be that, now you've got a healthy boundary in place, you've got more balance in your life, but your brain is not wired to see benefits or gains in the same way that we see losses. The losses are always going to be more noticeable, more consequential. And there was a beautiful example, or really relevant, it really resonated for me, example that I heard that illustrated this concept. It's like when you're driving down the street and there's a police car on the side of the road with its lights on, and there is maybe potentially a car accident, traffic slows down. Like people are stopping and looking, essentially breaking their necks to try to figure out what's going on. Are people hurt? How bad is it? And so that kinda is how our brain is wired, to pay attention to negativity or to pay attention to risk. The other side of that is oftentimes on highways when we're driving, there could be a field of flowers, a field of, these colorful, beautiful flowers, but nobody is slowing down to pay attention to and give attention to that field of flowers. And that is essentially how your brain is wired. You are going to pay more attention to what you might lose than what you might gain, which is why I think when it comes to taking social risk, this comparison risk to gain is not a very helpful one. I think what is more helpful for us to consider the relationship between is the risk of taking action. So if you were to take courageous action and say, nope, I'm setting a boundary, I'm not doing that. What is the risk? And we just named what the risk is. It's the risk of losing relationships and connection and access to projects and people. So that looks pretty big in our brain. The benefit of setting a boundary looks very minimal or minuscule. So what we want to do instead is we want to say, what is the risk if you don't? What is the risk if you don't set a boundary? What is the risk if you don't utter any words related to setting boundaries around you? And you already know what they are because you've named it. You said it's starting to take a toll on your personal life. And I don't really know what that means or how that, if we were to unravel that, what that looks like. But I do remember I had a client who, would come to work with knots in her shoulders. She would cry every night, it seemed like. She had piles of work to do because she always said yes to every project. And so what's at risk, if you don't set these boundaries, it's your health. It's your state of well-being. It's not only mental health, but it's physical health too. If you're not getting sleep, if you're working around the clock. So you have to think about, what is the risk if I don't? That's the first thing that I want us to put out there and say. So that hopefully gets us to look at the full picture of risk in a more balanced way, because our brain is just going to go to that police car on the side of the road and you being isolated from people and projects. Your brain isn't going to initially say, well, what's the risk if we don't do that, if we don't set boundaries, which is why I'm giving you this intentional question and way to look at this. Okay, so there's that. So as humans, we are afraid of losing. We are afraid of losing social connection. So there's loss aversion, we're afraid of losing. But then when we drill down a little deeper, what it really comes down to is we are afraid of losing social connection. And I want to let you know that I get it. I get it. We work in social spheres. We work around people. We need the support of people. We need people to advocate for us. And we don't want to lose that. So what ends up happening is exactly, I think professionals find themselves in the space that you are in right now. They end up sacrificing themselves to maintain the social connection. So I'm going to put my health, physical, mental, everything else aside over here so that I can maintain social connections. And the reason why we value these social connections so hard and we put them on a pedestal is because we are biologically wired to do so. So we can really thank our ancient cousin Bo and Aunt Angela. Okay, I don't know if Angela was a name back that our ancestors may have had, but anyway. We can thank them because our ancestors who were roaming plains and that kind of thing many, many years ago, they needed to be in relationship with people to literally survive. So they needed the people around them to not excommunicate them from the group so that they could have warmth, they could have food, they needed to be a part of that group. So now what it feels like for modern day professionals like yourself is we still have that biological wiring. And we are still triggered into survival mode when we feel like a connection is at risk. So the reason why you are currently not saying no to these projects that are breaking you down is because it triggers you into survival mode. You feel like it will potentially sever a relationship or sever a connection. And none of us want to do that. So here's the thing. When it comes to taking courageous action, one of the things that we have to remember is that it's not all about our social connections. I know we're wired to, value them, and we should value them, but that's not the only thing we have to value. The other thing that we have to value that balances the scale is respecting our social connections, yes, and it's respecting or honoring ourselves. So those are the two things that are on the scale that we must find balance in. It doesn't really work out well for us when most of our energy and effort is spent respecting the connection. Yes, we want to maintain social connections, but if you're spending 100% of your time worrying about and thinking about maintaining social connections, then you have zero time and energy to worry or think about honoring yourself. And that's where I'm sensing you are, which is just out of balance. You have put a premium on keeping those social connections like our ancestors needed to do. But modern life has evolved. This is what I like saying. Modern life has evolved. We no longer you don't need your coworker to buy you food or bring you food, and you don't need your boss to keep you warm. Unless oh my God, I was about to make a really bad joke about what's the lady's name that worked at Astronomer, the chief HR officer. Maybe she does need her boss to keep her warm, okay? But for most of us, that's not what we're doing. We are not engaging in that kind of activity. So modern life has evolved. Our brains are still wired this way, but it's an evolutionary mismatch. Okay, I know I'm getting in the weeds now, so let me pull myself back up and let me get back to your question. Really, what we have to do here is we have to level up the honoring ourselves. So I'm going to give you a couple of strategies to do that because that's what you're asking me for. How do I set boundaries? And everything that came before this is relevant and needs consideration. You're afraid of losing. You're afraid of losing social connections. We have to know that that's real so that we can acknowledge it and move forward. We also have to know that we've got to balance that with care and concern for ourselves. So let's figure out what are some strategies, and I wrote these down so that I wouldn't miss a strategy. But what are some strategies for saying no at work in a respectful way that maintains that connection, but also honors yourself? One of the first ones that I want to share is a strategy where you say no and. That's the concept of the strategy, no and. So when you're asking to put all these fires out, really all of them are not your fires. And so what we want to do is say no. But we don't want to leave our connections hanging. This is part of respecting our connections. We don't want to leave them hanging. We actually want to put them in a direction or push them in a direction where they don't have to start from zero. So no and allows you to do that. And essentially it's, I don't have capacity to work on this project and deliver the level of excellence that it deserves, that it requires. So that's your no. You can say it in words similar to those. But you want to add an and on the end of that, and you want to point the person coming to you in a direction. And so the no is really about, hey, I don't know the capacity of this other person over here. Let's call that person Angela, your ancestor, Angela. I don't know Angela's capacity, but Angela would be a really great person to work on this project. Have you talked to her? So it's in substance, that's a no and. I don't have the capacity to work on this project. It deserves focus and time and attention that can make it excellent. I don't have the capacity. And I know that Angela has a particular skill set that could be leveraged very well on this project. I don't know Angela's capacity, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Of course, we're going off the cuff right now in this conversation, but hopefully you see where I'm going, which is the no and. The giving the person who is coming to you with the request, giving them some kind of direction is how you maintain the relationship. It's how you respect the relationship while also honoring yourself. So no and is one strategy. Another strategy is yes if. Yes if is another way to say no. This is really about creating boundaries around the conditions of your yes. So yes is only going to happen if this is true. So you might be saying no to the initial request in the format that it has come in. Somebody has said, I need you to put out this fire immediately. I need you to do it like right now. And, you've got all these other things on your plate. Like, you don't have the capacity to put out this fire too. So yes, if is sure. Yeah, oh my gosh, yes, this is a big deal and I can work on this. If these projects that I'm working on right now can be deprioritized, the timelines can be shifted. Yes, I can work on this if, this project is taken off of my plate. Yes, I can work on this if fill in the blank condition. So that is effectively a no in the format that project or request has come to you in, and it is a yes according to the boundaries that you have set. So that is one strategic way to say no that maintains your relationship or respects your connection and, of course, honors yourself. The third strategy that I want to share with you is to slow down your yes. So if you are in the habit of saying yes, again, because it's a little bit attached to your identity, because you don't want to disappoint your connections, I get all of that. But if your habit is saying yes and you're not quite ready to say no, then what I want you to do is I want you to slow it down. I want you to slow down your yes. And I want you to slow it down by asking a lot of questions. I want you to ask questions like, what is the objective of the project? I want you to ask questions like, when is it due? Who's working on it? All questions related to the logistics of the project. Because this strategy does a couple of things. Number one, you're getting full information, or you're giving more information than you maybe initially had if you are just really quick and reflexive when you say yes. So you're slowing it down, you're getting information. Then maybe you can even pair that other strategy on, which you can create conditions for your yes. You're asking a lot of questions, maybe creating conditions for your yes, but you're not putting yourself in a position where maybe this project is going to require 30 more hours of work because you didn't ask the proper questions, or you didn't ask questions that would allow you to have more access to information about what it's really going to take for this project to happen. So you're going to slow it down by asking a lot of questions. The other thing that I have seen this strategy do is sometimes the person can ask so many questions that the person who made the request can become so annoyed that they just say, you know what, never mind. And that has happened, and that could happen. And if it does happen, then great. There is something that has not been added to your plate, and the person actually recognized that, listen, maybe this isn't the best person or the best time to ask this person. Let me go redirect this ask. So that's the third strategy, which is to slow down your yes. And the last strategy is to keep, I'm going to say three ways to say no in your back pocket. There is research that actually shows that the reason why many people don't say no, who want to say no at work, is because they don't know how. Like literally, you don't have the words to say no. You don't know how to say it. And so you ended up getting in this mumble jumble, like talking yourself in, talking yourself out, and then you end up saying yes, and you don't even know what you're saying yes to. So with courage, one of the things that needs to be true to get us closer to acting courageously is we've got to have internal resources. This is the last question we ask ourselves. But it's basically, what are my resources to persevere through the risk? And this question is really all about what do you have that's going to help you take this scary, risky, courageous action? One of those things is competence. This is skill, ability, proficiency, and knowledge to do a thing. Because when you feel more competent, then you have more confidence in doing that thing. So this is how I want you to level up your competence with saying no, is I want you to write down 3 ways in which you can say no at work. Maybe you get a certain type of request coming to you a lot, and you can write out an answer for how you want to say no to that particular kind of request. The reason I say write them out so that you can become familiar with them, you can learn how to say them. You can say them quickly. You don't have to look for words. You don't have to fumble around. You have practiced saying these 3 ways or approaches to saying no. So I'm going to invite you to do that, which is write them down, put them in your back pocket so that you can pull them out more easily when it comes time to say, Hell no. No, I'm just kidding. Don't say it like that. Do not say it like that because we are respecting connections, but you are going to strategically say no. So I'm going to wrap up the answer with that. And I hope this helps. I hope this gives you some fuel to be able to set more clear boundaries at work. So just a quick review is loss aversion. It gets all of us. I know you're afraid of losing. I know you're afraid of losing opportunity, but you got to look at both sides of the risk. You have to be able to balance respecting your connections with honoring yourself. And we can't forget to honor ourselves. We cannot forget to do this. And hopefully now you have 4 strategies that you can use and pull out whenever you need them about how you can strategically say no. So if you are to use any of these strategies at work, you know what I am going to ask you to do now, which is call back into the show and let us know how it goes. Want to take up more space at work without second guessing yourself? Join the Risk Fitness Club, my private community for ambitious professionals like you who are ready to speak up, step up, and show up courageously every single day. We're talking live workshops, expert-led trainings, and a crew that roots for you and your bold moves. Head to CandaceDoby.com to learn more and get on the list. We're back with Courage Candy. These are the bite-sized insights on courage that you can tuck in your pocket, put in your purse, and pull them out whenever you need a taste of courage motivation. Sometimes the hardest thing about saying no isn't the word. It's the story we attach to it. What if they think I'm not a team player? What if this is my last shot at a big opportunity? What if they stop asking? Here's the truth. Saying no doesn't make you less committed. It makes you clear and focused and strategic. So if you're tapped out, if you are needing to say no at work, here are 4 strategies to protect your energy without completely torching your reputation. Number 1, no and. This is a redirect with respect. You say something like, I don't have capacity to take that on, but based on my experience with X, this person might be a great fit. Of course, you want to mention that you don't know about that person's capacity, but what you're doing is you're redirecting the person who has come to you with a request in a direction where they won't have to start from zero. You're setting a boundary and preserving momentum. The second strategy is yes, if. Flip the ask. I can do that if we shift the other projects off my plate. Now you're negotiating and you're not just reflexively saying yes. Strategy number 3 is to slow down your yes. Before you jump in, pause and ask questions, get details. That brief slowdown is going to help you assess whether this request deserves your yes, or at least it's going to equip you with information that you need to move forward. The last strategy is to keep no's in your back pocket. Keep 3 ways to say no in your back pocket. Literally write down 3 ways that you can say no that feel natural to you. And I want you to practice them, pull them out when the pressure hits, because preparedness is power. Want to be more confident speaking up at work? Start by taking 1 intentional risk a day. That's what the Risk a Day Challenge is all about. 21 days, 21 risks to help you build the habit of courageous action. No fluff, just movement. If you're ready to train your courage like a muscle, head to CandaceDoby.com and check out the challenge. That's it for today's call on the Courage Hotline podcast. If you got something out of this episode, then be sure to share it with a friend or a colleague who could use a boost of courage. And if you've got your own professional challenge that you want me to weigh in on, visit CandaceDoby.com and leave me a message. The Courage Hotline is written by Candace Doby, produced by Karan Pimpale, music by Lamar Shirley, and production assistance from Monica Dulay.